Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and we have another really cool Strike Attack figure here today to take a look at, and this is one that I was actually really excited about, and even though it's not technically a new species to the Mattel line, it is a vast improvement from the older ones as far as the sculpt goes, and I actually quite like the paint scheme. But we've got ourselves the Herrerasaurus, and if you can recall, Mattel has had a Herrerasaurus in the Jurassic World line since like they got the license. Like, it was one of the earlier figures that they had released, but it wasn't a very good one. Like, it was kind of weird looking, kind of ugly looking, and definitely nowhere near as nice as this brand new version. So really happy that Mattel has gone ahead and sculpted out a brand new version of the Herrerasaurus. Potentially, hearing our complaints about the appearance of the older one, they went ahead and gave us a newer one, and this one looks fantastic if you ask me. But as far as the packaging goes, it's pretty much your standard when it comes to the Dino Trackers line. Again, we can see a little bit of a different sort of a habitat back there for our Herrerasaurus. And you can also see, again, Velociraptor Blue and Beta right there. And then here on the back of the packaging, you can get a look at the other figures that are in this wave of Strike Attacks, as we have the Adaphosaurus, the Zuniceratops, and the Geniodectes, all very cool figures, one of which is already up for review on the channel. The other two are coming soon. So let's pop this out of the box and check it out. And here is our Herrerasaurus, and I must say I really like this. First of all, we have lips, and that is awesome. Like, you don't see that very often from Mattel, so that's pretty cool straight away. The entire thing, though, has a really nice appearance, really vibrant detail, and on top of that, definitely a fan of the paint scheme. It looks like it has color from head to toe, which isn't something that we always get, and definitely not something that we've had a lot of when it comes to the Danger Pack and similar style figures, because these are Strike Attacks, not Danger Pack, but we've been reviewing the Danger Packs on the channel as well, and so far from what I've noticed, the coloration is almost classic Mattel, where it kind of cuts off at the hip and we don't have a whole lot going on in the back, whereas this one, even though that tail is definitely not positioned correctly, there we go, this one definitely has the appearance of color from head to tail. No nail paint, of course, but it's not the end of the world, I guess. Really cool looking for sure. I'm actually quite psyched about this one, so let's jump to a closer look at this beautiful Herrerasaurus right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Herrerasaurus, you can see again that we have some nice looking scale, detail, and everything going on here in the face. But one thing that's kind of jumping out at me right now is the eye. The eye placement is really bad. You can see it's completely missed its mark, which is a huge downside and not something that I've actually had to deal with when it comes to Mattel for quite some time, so kind of shocked to see that as far as this one goes. The eye is a yellowish coloration, and it seems like the pupil is almost just the grayish tone of the face. And look at that, also terrible. Look at the eyes are awful on this. Man, that's really bad. So apparently, if I can find another one of these in the future with better placed eyes, I'll probably have to purchase it again, because the quality control is not so great right now when it comes to Mattel, which is definitely a bummer, because I actually had thought that maybe they sorted this situation out and it wasn't going to be something that would be happening anymore, but clearly I was wrong. But again, I do like the tone of color that we have here on the face. It's more like almost like a slight mixture of a grayish brown, which is a very interesting tone of color. It looks really good on the figure, and again, the detailing as a whole looks really nice on the face of the Herrerasaurus. You've got some very nicely sculpted out osteoderms and stuff throughout. The nostrils are sculpted. We also, of course, have an articulated jaw. You can see the jaw opens pretty nicely. We've got a nice realistic tone of color there for the inside of the mouth, as well as the teeth, sculpted out fairly nicely, and also painted with kind of like an off-white bordering on a yellow. The jaw does work fairly nicely. As you move back up here to the top of the head, you start to see some ridges picking up here, running down the course of the neck, here along the back of the neck. You also see a pretty smooth transition as you move down from the darker tone to kind of like an orangish tone for the body. You can, again, pick up on some nice osteoderms and stuff throughout, some very nice looking, very fine scale detail. You've also got some skin wrinkles down here on the throat region. The throat itself is also quite nicely elaborated. You can see the darker tone transitions away here on the underside as well, again, as we primarily transition to the orangish tone. Moving down a little bit further, you can see a few kind of skin wrinkles and skin folds and stuff right there. And also, again, lots of really, really nice looking scale detail. The scale detail on this is actually quite phenomenal. And it also really is quite crisp. Like, it looks great as far as the way it just pops on the sculpt. Moving down here into the arms, you can see some nice muscle definition there in the arms of the dinosaur. You can also see the elbow right there. And then as you move down into the hands, you can see that the hands have some nice scoots down the fingers. Fairly nicely sculpted out nails, almost like your classic Mattel type of an arm or hand sculpt right there. It always looks pretty much the same, but you can also see that there is a speckling picking up, and I can really see that here in the hands and also running down the course of the arms. I also do see it up here in the body, mostly in the orangish areas. It really stands out. You can see again more ridges running along the back right there as we have a button for an action feature. Again, more osteoderms and stuff throughout. Then we start to have this darker brown kind of running up and striping into the body, which I do quite like. As we lead back here into the hip region, you start to see the orange kind of taper away here. Not even really taper away, it just transitions away very abruptly, which I actually also quite like. But then you can see that the rest of the figure is this darker brown, which also looks good. Again, it does give the appearance of color from head to tail, which is really quite nice. We also have the Jurassic Facts app, which I might as well pull out right now because we're here. There you go. It's slightly crooked. As you move down here into the thigh, you start to see a few larger kind of osteoderms and stuff right there, as well as, again, that same style of finer scaling we've seen through the majority of the figure. You can also see the muscle definition in the thigh as well as the calf as you move down. You've also got a nicely sculpted out kneecap, really nicely sculpted out foot as well. Again, scoots down the toes like we usually see. The nails look pretty nice, except for the fact that they don't actually have any specific paint to them. Same deal with the hands. They kind of look like they might have a slight gloss coat to them, but no actual nail paint. We do have dew claws, which is always a plus, and you can see that the scale detail and everything down here in the feet also looks quite nice. And then as you move up here, you've got a few more skin wrinkles right there behind the thigh as you lead out into the tail. The tail is the brownish tone entirely. You can see the orange cuts off right there actually at the transition to the tail, right there where that joint is where the orange ends, so the tail is entirely that brownish tone. And you do have a nice curve to the tail as well, which is pretty cool. Pretty nice looking detailing here for the underside, but again, it's almost like your classic Mattel detailing to the underside of a figure. It almost always looks that way. And then if you look over here, again, the head sculpt looks really nice. The paint of the eye is absolutely atrocious, but as you continue to move back, you have the same style of detail, pretty much as what you had just seen on the initial side. Again, that darker brown striping up and leading into the stomach. The only big difference over here would be maybe a slightly different positioning for the hand, but actually it kind of looks the same. It's a little hard to tell. And also the leg is leading on the opposing side, trailing on this side, but that's really about the only difference. Other than that, it looks fairly similar, pretty much the same, and again looks really quite nice from all sides. Definitely a huge, huge improvement over the older one. As far as articulation goes, again, we have the articulated jaw, which can open pretty wide. You can get a decent amount of an opening there on the jaw. You also have articulation in the neck, which goes up and down, does not go left and right, does not swivel, only up and down. And again, I think it's because the action feature, yep, is actually going to be a head-banging action feature. So if we just get the hand up, there we go. Now he is absolutely head-banging. I assume this is kind of like a, yeah, we're going to snap at you, but the jaw doesn't actually snap type of an action feature. I mean, it is what it is. It's okay, I guess, just not really that great. You do also have the articulation in the arms, which is nice, and we have the ability to move the arms out, which is something that we didn't have on any of the Danger Pack figures. And then you also have the articulation on the legs here that is a little bit jerky, not really super smooth. The legs can also move out away from the body a little bit, not too far. And then, of course, a swivel tail just to top off the figure. And that's really about it. It also does stand quite nicely. But for a size, it's absolutely going to be exactly the size you think it's going to be, because these type of figures are always right in the same similar size range. You're looking at around 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters in length. And then for a height, you're looking at just shy of 3 inches or around 7.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our Herrerasaurus, our brand new Strike Attack Herrerasaurus. And you can definitely see, again, it's exactly the size you probably expected it to be. But for another comparison, there is a Mattel Dilophosaurus and Velociraptor next to the Herrerasaurus, again showing you that it sits right there in a similar size range to those figures as a whole. So again, if you're a Mattel collector, you'll definitely know what the size is of this new Herrerasaurus. But for one final comparison, here is our new Strike Attack version of the Herrerasaurus next to the older version of the Herrerasaurus from Mattel. And again, you can just see such a major improvement on the newer one. First of all, the pose is a lot nicer. The older one was slightly awkward looking. The tail looks better, even though it's also still short, but it looks better, I think, than the older one. And the head sculpt is just majorly improved as a whole, so that is definitely a huge plus as well. So again, even the paint job I think is better on the newer one than the older one, although there were a few different variants of the older one, but definitely nicer paint on the newer one. Again, as a whole, this figure entirely, everything about it, in my opinion, is a much better version than the older Mattel Herrerasaurus. So this brand new Mattel Jurassic World Dino Tracker Strike Attack Herrerasaurus is actually a really, really nice figure. Definitely a very welcome addition to the Mattel line because they have given us a Herrerasaurus that actually looks more like a Herrerasaurus and definitely has a really, really nice, much better looking sculpt. The detail as well is fantastic on this version. Extremely, extremely crisp, which is something that Mattel has been doing for quite a little while now, and I'm just continuously impressed by how good the sculpts on their figures have become. Just really, really impressive looking detail on the sculpts. And on top of that, again, just generally the overall appearance of this one is a lot nicer than the older Herrerasaurus was, so I'm a huge fan of the sculpting and detailing of this one over the older one. The paint job as well is actually quite fun. I really do quite like the paint scheme they've come up with here. The tones of color look great on it. The coloration all plays off of each other really quite nicely overall. I think again, the darker tone for the face looks really good. The orangish tone for the body has that nice element of flashiness, and then that brown creeping in from behind and striping up into the body also looks great and plays off of the orange really nicely. So very nice paint application. Honestly, aside from the horribly sloppy eyes, the paint application looks really good on this. Of course, it could have used some painted nails, but that's something that we always need for our Mattel figures that we don't get. The action feature is okay, but it's just kind of generic. There's not really a whole lot to it. The articulation, though, is pretty nice and works quite nicely, but I honestly would have preferred to just have a figure without the action feature so we'd have more posability in the neck. Regardless, it's still a major improvement over the older Herrerasaurus and definitely a recommendation from me. So if you are interested in picking this up, I will include a link in the description to where you can do that on Big Bad Toy Store, where I purchased mine. Again, the last time I had checked, the listing was actually out of stock for the full case, but I have seen it going in and out of stock on there a few times. So if you click the link and it's out of stock, just keep checking back at a later date. It should hopefully pop back into stock soon, and you'll be able to place an order. So I will include a link again in the description where you can head straight to the listing for this on Big Bad Toy Store. So make sure you check that listing. Go check out these figures. Again, the entire wave of these strike attacks on Big Bad Toy Store. Grab yourself a set once they're in stock, and also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.